I think people are trickling in. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a spooky welcome to our town hall on Halloween. My name is Svenja Espenhaan, and I'm the manager of the Canadian Rare Disease Network, le Réseau Canadien de Maladies Rares. Thank you for joining us today as we present our strategic plan, which has really been a huge team effort and will be our roadmap for improving rare disease care and research across Canada over the coming years. It's fantastic to see so many of you here today, ready to engage with us and the work that we are planning on doing and help us shape a path forward. Oops. So before we begin, just a few quick items to help the meeting go smoothly. Please keep your microphones muted during the presentations to minimize any background noise. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. And you can either raise your hand during the Q&A session, or you can use the chat function throughout the presentations to submit any questions that you might have. Since we are virtual, if you encounter any technical issues, feel free to reach out to us at info@canadianrdn.ca. We'll add that to the chat as well. And if you experience any lag, try turning off your video. Lastly, this meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made available afterwards. So before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that the work of the Canadian Rare Disease Network spans from coast to coast to coast and takes place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous nations. We honor the profound and enduring connections that Indigenous communities hold with these lands, waters, and the non-human relatives, recognizing Indigenous communities as the traditional knowledge keepers and stewards of these lands where we work and gather today. With this in mind, we commit to upholding these principles in our work, guided by the belief that meaningful progress toward inclusivity and respect requires collective action. So let me give you a quick rundown of what we'll be covering today. We'll kick things off with a brief overview of the Canadian Rare Disease Network, the co-development process that we've used to create our strategic plan, and the ways that you can get involved and help us shape our direction. Next, you will have our pillar leads dive into the key goals and strategies that have been identified. And then at the end, as mentioned, we'll open the floor for your questions and discussion. So please drop any questions you have in the chat as they come to you, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible during the Q&A. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our fantastic speakers who drive our work at the Canadian Rare Disease Network and beyond, each making a unique impact in rare diseases through their leadership and expertise. So first off, we have Dr. François Bernier, who is the chair of the Canadian Rare Disease Network. François is also the director of the Alberta Children's Hospital Research Institute, professor of medical genetics and pediatrics at the University of Calgary, and leads the University of Calgary's One Child Every Child initiative. As a clinical geneticist with Alberta Health Services and a physician at the Alberta Children's Hospital, François is devoted to advancing our understanding of rare genetic disorders. You will also hear from Dr. Kim Boycott, who is our diagnostics and registries pillar lead, and she is truly a force in rare disease diagnostics. Kim is a professor in pediatrics at the University of Ottawa, a clinical geneticist at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, the chair of the Department of Genetics, and a senior scientist at the CHEO Research Institute. She also spearheads the Care for Rare Canada Consortium, which aims to solve the most challenging rare diseases using advanced genomic technologies. Next, you will hear from Leanne Ward, who is our Innovative Therapies pillar lead and brings decades of dedication to pediatric bone health. A professor of pediatrics at the University of Ottawa, Leanne's held a research chair in pediatric bone health since 2010. Leanne also directs the Ottawa Pediatric Bone Health Research Group and is the medical director of CHEO's Pediatric Bone Health and Rare Bone Disease Clinic. As a pediatric endocrinologist, her work is crucial in improving outcomes for children with rare bone disorders. And last, but certainly not least, you will hear from Dr. Ian Statman, our Care, Support, and Empowerment Pillar Lead. Ian brings a uniquely personal perspective as a rare disease patient, parent, and advocate. He's an assistant professor in the School of Public Policy and Administration at York University and board chair of the Canadian Auto-Inflammatory Network. He serves as a legal member of the Sick Kids Research Ethics Board and is a patient partnership lead for the Pan-Canadian Genome Library, making him a strong voice for rare disease patients in Canada. So please join me in welcoming them to the virtual stage. And Francois, please feel free to take it away.
Okay, thanks for joining everyone, and happy Halloween, and also pay my respects to the lands that I live and thrive on, along with so many of my friends, colleagues, and families. So before I forget, I just want to create a shout out to Svenja and Karishma. Svenja, our project manager, and Karishma leading communications for the CRDN. We've accomplished a lot, I think, in our launch, and we'll try and give you a sense of where we're heading. But today is a bit of I think, a pivotal day, not only because we want to give you a sense of our direction, but also seek input on the direction. Finalizing strategic plans need to be co-developed and co-informed. So this is truly an opportunity for you to join in and help us out. So we'll try and lay the framework of where we currently are, and before we finalize things, are seeking input and further directions. So why a network? And the opportunity of the network isn't new. We've had massive opportunities and strengths as national organizations like CORD and RQMO, who have been leading a charge of advocacy, of bringing the community together, of informing and representing particularly the voice of families in this space. But we've never really been able to develop in Canada a national comprehensive approach to rare diseases. There have been drafts of rare disease strategies. But there's also been, for no lack of effort, massive success in the rare disease space, and maybe no more momentum than we've ever seen in the rare disease space in the past few years. But how could we coordinate those kind of somewhat fragmented efforts? And how do we bring the community together? And that diagram on the right of a bridging role is really the network. It's a network of networks. It's not here to own. It's not here to act in isolation. It's here to represent the truly remarkable family, community, academic, clinician, industry stakeholders, and then the funders of our systems in a way that can advance and improve outcomes. So, like many organizations, we thought hard and long about a vision, and that vision I think is a strong one. It aspires to empower the lives of individuals, families, and communities of rare diseases. Our mission, you'll hear a lot about, and we mostly are talk today around the pillars of work. And actually, as we were developing it, it was so interesting that many of the individuals and groups and partners that we were working with had very, very similar kind of vision and figures and pillars. And so we were realizing, okay, there's something cohesive about this concept of enabling access to timely diagnosis. We need access to improve treatment being used in a broad context, but also care, support, and empowerment of families and communities that are challenged often by external forces and external issues to thrive. So vision, mission, and so how does all this come together? I mean, built off of lots of people who have been thinking and working in this space, and many of them are on the call today, and we're not hearing all the voices. CORD bringing us together, and RQMO always present in the space. Last June at a meeting where there was this kind of more of a think tank workshop around what's the next steps for a rare disease community. Obviously the rare disease strategy funded by the federal government, and meetings occurred at that time, and pre-meeting work laid the foundations for a concept of a national rare disease network. We brought an interim leadership group together. You're going to hear from a lot of that leadership group today, and we'll show it in a minute. We crowdsourced a logo if people were at the CORD meeting in November, and ended up with the starting point of every good thing is a good name and a logo, I guess. But it really started to form the concepts of what a rare disease network would look like. There was a wonderful public launch of the network, also in Ottawa on Rare Disease Day last year. that created a platform and a venue and a walk up to Parliament to showcase the need and opportunity to really focus our continued efforts to improving the lives of families and individuals, communities of rare diseases. And then very quickly positioning of the network in partnership with MyCERN, and I see Thierry, and I don't know if Brienne's on, I suspect she is, who are the National Mirror Group for Canada to ERDERA. So the positioning of the CRDN to start positioning and supporting and advocating at the international level, so both national and international work. So our pillars, we've alluded to them already several times, and I think are well kind of encapsulated in this single figure of kind of this tagline of rare lives, shared strength. The kind of key stakeholder organizations or members, and using that term in a very broad sense, but across the interrelated, these aren't isolated pillars, but the interrelated pillars of diagnostics and registries, innovation and therapies, care, support, and empowerment. And this other one, which Svenja just pointed out to me, was actually the blue in the background, which is, the need for, particular in this space. And I think our community has always been so strong and powerful and working together collaboratively instead of competitively, but also therefore underpinning everything, this concept of national and international collaboration. I like viewing the CRDN in another format. I'm not sure if we have that next slide. Maybe we don't, Svenja. The 3-pillar one. Oh, this is it. Yeah, just seeing it in a different size. Okay, so I like viewing the 3 pillars this way because what it encompasses is really that the CRDN doesn't focus its efforts on one part of the pathway. The improvement in lives and outcomes that we're all aspiring to does need discovery research. It needs the application of that discovery research into clinical space, so clinical trials, clinical research, and then it needs to be empowered into the care system. So the CRDN is not a research network, it's not a clinical network. It aspires to support the full pathway from discovery to care transformation. So you can see the 3 pillars there driving from discovery up into those higher aspirational outputs and outcomes. So another way of looking at the pillars of the network. We hesitate to show this slide, and yet I think it's important to show this slide because very, very quickly in the development of the network, we not only were able to engage in a significant way, and I think there's been meaningful engagement with all of these organizations, either as members of our working group, our leadership group, but also because they represent many, but not all. And I think the key issue of angst a little bit and showing the slide is there's clearly many organizations that are not yet represented on not only in this slide, but we also wanted to represent and show the breadth of what a network of networks was able to rapidly do from the time that we started this concept to today's meeting. So visit our website and much of this information is up there and you can continue to learn about us. So how we're governed is, I would really say we're in an interim leadership space where we have a secretariat, and it's a small but nimble group that I mentioned up front. We have a steering committee and are in the process of launching a broader advisory committee. You can see the pillar working groups, and you'll hear from the pillar working groups and the members of those pillar working groups on slides, so you can see who's actually, has put pen to paper and is willingly and quickly jumped in to support the development of this program. And then still in evolution are these kind of on the right-hand side there, the patient family advisory councils. We do have engagement with major national organizations, obviously, but also looking at the national and then the global partnership space, and then, space and opportunity, and still evolving is our relationship with industry, which is obviously critical. And then those cross-cutting priorities in gray that you can see underneath the pillars, and lots of need for us to continue to work, but I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to continue to evolve this. I'm reminded on the bottom right-hand side of the slide of the One Child Every Child logo, because the network is currently funded. So, our secretariat is funded by the One Child Every Child initiative, which is a Canada First Research Excellence Fund grant held at the University of Calgary with many partners. And as a priority has the opportunity and is keen to support the development of this network. I think the questions of the longer term positioning of the network, and that's why it's positioned and housed at the University of Calgary, is that's where the One Child Every Child funding is. But it's going to be up to this governance committee and lots of this community that's online to think about, where do we position the network in the longer run for sustainable success. So here's our steering committee members, and I won't go through them one by one, but I think it's important to recognize that these individuals willingly and very quickly accepted to be part of the steering committee, have contributed significantly to the development and shaping of the overall network. And then some of them are not only leading pillars, but have also joined in on some of the pillar working groups. So just a shout out to this incredible group. And I'm sure some of them are online, but obviously I recognize, the tremendous strengths in building capacity and really advocacy of Derhane and Gail and Jonathan from our QMO who are online, and then many of the academic leads who have joined. And Thierry, I mentioned earlier, leading MyCERN, and MyCERN is the National Mirror Group organization to Erdera, but also has and is leading a very important project for the network and for the community called Rare Kids Can. So just a really neat community, you guys, and always a privilege to work in this kind of rare disease space. Okay, so how did we get here? A series of steps have already occurred, and you can see where we're at the blue step, but through the kind of spring, there was starting to be this engagement process of a series of sessions that brought together experts, and you can see this kind of greater than 900 minutes of meaningful dialogue occurring on, what would be the priorities. We had a rough framework of the pillars, but, were they the right ones? But what are you going to slot into in each of those pillars? And then culminating into, this phase today, which is the virtual town hall. So we have a draft of this. We're going to start reviewing it with people and circulating. We'll have an opportunity for community feedback. That's the green box there. So if you haven't seen the QR codes yet, you'll see the QR codes where you can log in and start looking at and not only the strategy and the summaries that you're seeing today, but also a way of providing feedback to us. And your feedback and opinion is important. And then we're going to go through a process after that, late this year into early next year, to finalize the draft of the strategic plan. I think strategic plans are always iterative. They're not static. They will be improved. They will change as you finish some work. You'll move in other directions. So let's not take anything as written in stone, but as a starting point to iteratively be improved as a national community. So here we are today. So how can you be involved? The involvement of the community is crucial because I think everyone that I've worked with as part of CRDN so far view us as representing the community. So there is the opportunity today, as we've been highlighting, to inform the final strategy. So that's step one of involvement. We then want to share that strategy fairly broadly. It will be public. And then shared with the stakeholder government organizations at the provincial territorial level and the federal level. We're already having significant conversation with the federal government, which you're going to hear kind of strewn in a little bit between the lines of today's conversations. In terms of transparency, your responses are anonymous. We want to hear from you in a meaningful way. If you don't choose to share your contact information. If you choose to share your contact information, obviously you may be contacted for follow-up, but we definitely protect your privacy of your personal information you're sharing with us if you decide to do so. And then we will create summaries of what we've heard through this engagement process. So we will be not only valuing your input, but being transparent with what we've heard and sharing that back with everyone. And hopefully it'll inform a better, well, I know it will inform a better strategy. So, attending is step one. For people who aren't here, share the link, share the space on the website, share the social media links to individuals, colleagues, partners, organizations that you think would be interested in filling out the survey. And you can see a draft of the proposed strategic plan linked there, and also the online survey. And if you go to the QR code, you will get both of those linked. So the QR code is your quick pass if you obviously don't get a chance to click onto these links. But in the chat right beside us, you can't click on the ones in the slides. Obviously, these links are also positioned. So opportunity to hear from you. Okay, so this is my last slide, and what we're showing you in a single snapshot is we talked about those three primary pillars and one underpinning one, which is the national global collaborations. You're going to hear from Kim, Leanne, and Ian across the diagnostic registries, innovation therapy, care, support, and empowerment. And they're going to talk through the specific goals and opportunities within each one of these pillars. So, un gros merci à l'équipe qui ont travaillé tellement fort pour développer un début vraiment de notre groupe national, notre réseau de maladies rares. Alors, je passe le bâton à Kim.
Thank you, Francois. Okay, so we're going to focus first on pillar one, which is diagnostics and registries. And the gap we're trying to address in pillar one is really addressing the diagnostic odyssey and invisibility that can come with living with a rare disease and often undiagnosed. So next slide, Svenja. So the members of the Pillar 1 committee can be seen there. And here we're bringing together expertise in genomics and knowledge translation and registries, diagnostics, newborn screening. So sort of the whole gambit of things that we would need to think deeply about how we could begin to address some of the gaps in diagnostics and registries. So this is basically the summary, and I'm going to go through each of these quickly on individual slides, but just so you can have an overarching look at what we're trying to address. It really is around reducing the time it takes to identify rare diseases. And we have 5 activities that are part of this, Pillar 1. The first is focusing on right test, right time, regardless of where you live in Canada. The second is really focused on the diagnostic labs in Canada and making sure that we're sharing best practices and resources across all of those labs so that the quality of the test is the same no matter where you live. The third is looking at registries, and in particular, using this to ensure that every Canadian family can have access to research no matter where they live by setting up registry for secondary research and recontact. Fourth is around some of the things that come from this particular pillar, which really does require infrastructure, both at a provincial and federal level, and therefore rare disease in this context needs to be a political priority so that those pieces of infrastructure required to achieve what we're talking about here is sustainably funded. And last is around research and the actual research that would be done in this pillar to making sure that we're leaders in discovering the mechanism of rare disease, as well as ensuring that the new technologies that are coming along move into the clinic as quickly as possible to help even provide more diagnoses for families. So this is an overview of that first activity and that first goal, which is the right test at the right time, no matter where you live. And so this is focusing around how do we actually start to move that across Canada. And part of it, some of the activities you can see along the center there, which is focused on looking at the current visibility of rare disease patients in the healthcare system right now, which is not great. Education to non-geneticists, physicians, and allied healthcare professionals related to genetics and genomics, so that we can get testing out to as many people as possible where appropriate. And along with that is really about how do we develop a framework such that these frontline care providers are comfortable ordering these tests and interpreting them and knowing when to get genetics involved to help with interpretation and sharing that with the family. And the last is improving and harmonizing newborn screening across Canada. On the right, you can see the benefits that will go with this, but all of it leading to better testing for everyone. Okay, next there's Svenja. Thank you. So the next is a laboratory focused goal, and that is to make sure, as I said, that all of the genetic diagnostic laboratories are sharing best practice guidelines, co-developing them to ensure high quality tests from every place in Canada. And this focus really is sharing this clinical data across diagnostic laboratories, which we've started to do, which is a key thing that hasn't actually been done in Canada before, as well as co-developing key guidance documents to enhance and ensure that we have excellent standards in genomic testing across Canada. And all of this, of course, would lead to faster and more accurate diagnoses of high quality tests for patients. Okay, the third goal is around access to relevant registries and secondary research for families, no matter where they live. This is really around supporting a national network of registries to enhance this use. And in this goal, we're working closely with Canada's Drug Agency, who also has some work and activity going on in this area, and also working with Rare Kids Can, that will be doing some registry work around best practices and standards. So again, as Francois was describing, this is about making sure everybody is working together and not duplicating efforts. And we are working with the Pan-Canadian Genome Library to set up a national recontact registry for families, so that they have the option, no matter where they live, that they'll be able to be reachable for research or clinical trials. The fourth goal, as I mentioned, is really around political will and investment from both the federal and provincial levels to ensure that all of the things we need to access diagnoses and make them available are sustainably funded. There's a lot of initiatives going on in this space, and we need to align those and bring them all together so that we can have a co-design a health data ecosystem, essentially, that is sustainable. Look at how the healthcare systems across our jurisdictions are integrating genomics into pathways, and how they're being actioned. And then again, doing some of this advocacy work and developing the policy briefs to bring that necessary infrastructure to Canada, which right now is quite fragmented and lacking. And then the last one from Pillar 1 is really key to the research in this area, and that is around doing what we have been doing for 10 years, which is, was working pretty well, but we have many, many mechanisms we still need to discover to be able to provide answers for families. We need to look at all the new technologies that are coming along and generate that utility and economic data, cost effectiveness, value for money, so we can bring that into accessible and funded tests in the healthcare system. And looking at the research national genomic infrastructure so that we can make sure that there is great use of all that data that ultimately will benefit people living with rare disease.
Great, thanks so much, Kim. Kim's passing the baton off to me, Leanne Ward, to discuss innovative therapies. As Svenja mentioned, I'm the Pillar 2 lead, and it's been a real wonderful journey getting to the point of being able to present our thoughts on their strategic planning around innovative therapies. When we came forward to think about innovative therapies, we thought about the quadruple jump, which represents the development of innovative therapies from preclinical development to getting them to patients in the clinic. And so that quadruple jump is really represented by the preclinical pipeline, the animal models that show proof of principle and the mechanistic aspects of drug development and initial safety, and then taking that to clinical trials where clinical trials are predicated upon rigorous science to show efficacy and safety for innovative therapies. And then drugs and therapeutics need a specific access pathway in order to get the therapies to individuals with rare diseases in Canada. And even beyond the access pathways, we need a way of delivering these drugs and novel therapeutics to patients in the clinic, and need to be sure that clinics are appropriately resourced in order to bring these therapies directly to the patient in that context. Next slide. I had the pleasure of working with the Pillar 2 members, Craig and Pranesh and Jim and Heather and Thierry and Hans and Kim and Miriam and Brianne, Rossini and Durhane. And these individuals represent the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, academic research, and clinical leadership, as well as individuals who are working in the preclinical drug development pipeline. And so we met over a number of months and had a number of engagement sessions in order to chisel ideas as to the pathway that we would like to put forward to optimizing the development of innovative therapies in Canada. Next slide. So just as Kim showed you, we have 4 overarching goals that have come out of Pillar 2, and I'll go through them briefly, and then I'll have a dedicated slide to each one of them to discuss them more specifically. So our first goal is that we'd like to see Canada to lead in the discovery and the validation of novel therapeutic targets and treatments for rare disease patients. What really struck us in the course of the engagement sessions is the extent to which people would like us to really lean into the development of drugs very early on in that quadruple jump, as I mentioned earlier. Our second goal is that all rare disease patients, regardless of their age, location, or social context, will have equitable access to clinical trials and innovative therapies. We're certainly aware that there are a number of barriers to access to therapies, and so this goal is to understand those barriers, dismantle them, and ensure that innovative therapies are getting to as many rare disease individuals as possible. The third goal is that innovative therapies will be readily integrated into clinical practice to improve patient care and outcomes. So developing a novel therapy, showing that it's safe, showing that it's effective is just one step in actually getting it to patients. And so we recognize we need to have a way of integrating these novel therapies effectively into the clinical care landscape. And then our fourth goal is that Canada will be recognized globally for its rare disease clinical trials and market potential, thereby attracting investment and accelerating access to innovative therapies. We really want the world to look upon Canada and say, we want to partner with Canada. We want to partner with Canada's patient community. We want to partner with Canada's drug developers on the clinical side and on the preclinical side, and we want to be excited about doing that. So this is the nature of goal number 4. Next slide. So here are these 4 goals just broken down a little bit more. The first being that Canada will lead in the discovery and validation of novel therapeutic targets. This has been driven by the need to have coordinated national initiatives and strengthened infrastructure to unlock homegrown development of life-changing therapies for patients. We know that we have tremendous potential in Canada to contribute to the preclinical drug development pipeline. And what we want to do now is really harness that potential, bring people together in a coordinated fashion, and in so doing, optimize this aspect of that quadruple jump. To do that, we hope to coordinate and align national initiatives supporting preclinical research, development, and production of therapies, and enable a supportive national framework. Right now, we have pockets of activity going on. We want to bring together people so that 1 + 1 = 3 across the country. We hope to develop policy briefs to advocate for development and sustainability of necessary technologies and infrastructure to support novel therapy development and validation. So we recognize that we're going to need a whole set of, as we say here, policy briefs, documents, guidance that's written out and that's been put together in a way that's curated very carefully with all of the stakeholders. And the benefits of this goal, if we can achieve it, is to have homegrown therapy development, as I mentioned, more treatment options for patients and faster access to innovations because the therapies have been developed on our own soil. Next slide. The second goal, as I said earlier, is that all rare disease patients, regardless of their age, location, or social context, will have equitable access to clinical trials and innovative therapies. We see this, those of us who are working in the clinical trial space, we see the barriers that exist to certain Canadians getting access to clinical trials. And so we want to, as I said, understand and dismantle those barriers. So that need is driving this goal. We'd like to improve clinical trial infrastructure to ensure that equitable access to therapies across the lifespan, particularly focusing on the adult space, but of course the children as well. But the reality is that many rare diseases are diagnosed in childhood, and the care plan and the research studies are activated in those formative years. But the adults, we feel, are sorely neglected from the rare disease clinical trial drug development space. So we really want to lead into that. We want to advocate for streamlined processes, clear guidance, and effective regulations that ensure timely approval of and access to therapy. So that's working with policymakers and government. We'd like to leverage registries. You've heard about that from Kim as well, to gather real-world evidence, assess the disparities that exist in our country, and support equitable access to innovative treatments by the understanding that would come from registries and knowing where rare disease patients are coming from, what their barriers are, and what their profiles are in that sense. And then we'd like to promote comprehensive health economic evaluations to demonstrate the value and the impact of the therapies that are coming to Canada and being effectuated in Canada, and for that to inform policy decisions on access and reimbursement. So we recognize as a network, we very much need to partner with the health economic aspect of this initiative. Next slide. And then our third goal, again, innovative therapies will be readily integrated into clinical practice. As I said, this is driven by the need to have optimal healthcare provider education and support and resourcing to enable effective integration of therapies into clinical practice. I'm a clinician. I take care of patients with rare disorders. I can have access to a novel therapy, but then I need to be able to deliver it, have a care team around me, a group of specialists who can work with me to deliver that therapy, to ensure that the patients are having best outcomes as a result of that therapy. And that requires partnership with people in the community as well, the family physicians and other healthcare providers. So there's a whole sea of education that we need to do and resourcing that we need to optimize in order to bring these therapies forward. So education, developing specialized expert groups to provide the support and guidance that healthcare providers need to support patients no matter where they live in Canada, and building a comprehensive healthcare provider network across various levels of care are all integral to this goal. Next slide. And then finally, Canada will gain global recognition for its rare disease clinical trials and market potential in attracting partners from around the world. This is driven by the fact that we feel that in Canada, we're a little bit demure at the moment, and we really want to create a spark and an excitement. We know we've got great physicians working in this country. We've got great basic scientists. We've got wonderful patient communities and advocates who have an amazingly echoing voice, but we want to augment that and really send the message to the world. We're doing it here in Canada. Come partner with us. We have a lot to share and a lot to contribute to this rare disease innovative therapy space. And in so doing, we'll have greater global recognition and investment attraction. Our therapeutic advances will develop more quickly, and overall that will lead to better access to innovative therapies for individuals living with rare disorders. So thank you for the opportunity to share that with you. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. And I look forward to partnering with all of you that are here and engaged in this very exciting initiative. Ian, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all once again for taking the time to be with us today. As is obvious to everyone here, there's so much that we need to do for rare disease patients and families. And you'll see that Pillar 3 certainly reflects that. I mean, there's a lot. But I think what you'll also see now that we've been through so much of this conversation is that even though we have these 3 pillars, there are certainly cross-cutting priorities. These aren't 3 distinct silos of things that need to be accomplished. This is a network, right? So this slide here just offers some context about this pillar. When we sat down to think about what we need to be focused on, the list, to be honest, seemed quite daunting. Many of us here on this call have lived the conversations around care, support, and empowerment. This is not just an intellectual exercise. This is not academic. So there's just a lot of big topics that come to mind, and a few of them are transitions in care, hugely important. I have a kid who's preteen right now, and I'm thinking about that actively. Navigating resources and services, huge difference across the country, good for some, terrible for others. Mental health and psychosocial supports. This is something we have not talked about enough historically, and we need to talk more about, because it's lonely. It's lonely to live with a rare disease. And sometimes when you live with a rare disease and you have no one who you can share with and learn from, it's even lonelier. So we really do need to talk about support, financial supports and programs. Again, a conversation we don't have enough about what's out there to help us navigate the lives that we're living and the burdens that we have. Education and advocacy, empowerment. There's just a lot, right? So next slide, please. We assembled an incredible team of advocates and thought leaders. I won't read the names again, but just a huge thank you to this beautiful group of humans for all the time that they've volunteered to helping us get to the point we're at today, where we can come to the community, the broader community, and share our thoughts and get some feedback. Like the other pillars, we've put together 4 broad goals, not next slide, that we think we should be striving toward. And we're really eager to hear your opinions, the opinions of the broader community about where we've landed so far. But again, keep in mind that when we're looking at this pillar, I think much of the work is already being done, not all of it, much of it. And we don't want to duplicate, but what we do want to do is amplify and consolidate as much as possible, right? The goal for the network is a united rare disease community across this country. And so we also recognize that our goals, in order to do that, to accomplish them, are going to have to be dynamic and evolving and really pulling on the knowledge and the power and the energy of our community. So again, nothing here is set in stone, but we do want to put something out there for you to give us feedback on and to engage with so that we can continue to iterate. Next slide, please. So we have, just like Pillar 2, 4 main overarching goals that have come out of our discussions to date. 1 is about access to information and resources. 2 is about being empowered to engage more in research and advocacy. 3 is about recognizing and trying to do something about the psychosocial burden of living with rare disease and caring for people who live with rare disease. And 4 is about building our community so that we can find, more efficient, more effective ways to continue to share with one another and support one another. So the next 4 slides will be getting into a little bit more detail on those 4 goals. Okay. First one, all rare disease patients, along with their families and caregivers, we're aspirational in how we've stated these things, will be aware of and have equitable access to the resources and supports they need. What we really want to do is make sure that there are people, RQMO, the iRare centers, there's lots of people out there doing great work to consolidate resources, to make resources available. And we don't want to duplicate that work. We want to develop strategies to help increase awareness of the work that's being done. So people, whether you have a diagnosis or searching for a diagnosis, know where you can go to find information. Also information about, assistance programs, aid. There's just a lot of opportunity out there to help people get access to information better that will help reduce, disparities in access and improve the utilization of the resources that are available. Goal 2, please. Number 2 is all individuals affected by rare diseases will be empowered and engaged in meaningful opportunities in research and beyond. So this is the one that I'm right now seeing a ton of momentum on. You know, I was diagnosed 10 years ago, and from 10 years to now, the conversations about patient engagement are really lighting up the landscape, and they're really starting to be very positive, and we're starting to see more and more opportunities. You know, they're not perfect yet. I note that we still have a long ways to go, but as a network, what we can do is continue to amplify the opportunities that do arise, and find ways to support people who want to create opportunities for empowerment and engagement, to get patients and the community access to and information about opportunities. And so you'll notice that we have a newsletter at the CRDN already. We have a website where you can send us your opportunities and we'll post them. We really want to find ways for patients and families to become more engaged in research, in policy, in advocacy. And the more we shout that from the rooftop, hopefully the more opportunities will arise and the more people will see that as a viable way to engage. You know, policy doesn't happen in a vacuum, it's about us. So we should be included in those conversations too. So goal number 2 really aligns with creating more opportunities. 3, all rare disease patients and their families will receive the mental health and well-being support that they need, regardless of their location or social context. This is a big one. I remember when I was first diagnosed and I went to my first CORD conference, it felt like my life had changed. I walked into a room and I didn't see anyone in that room with my diagnosis, but I met a whole bunch of people who'd been through something similar to what I had been through. And I got a chance to hear them speak and talk, and I felt like I wasn't alone. But I didn't really have time until after that first CORD conference to reflect on what it was like to feel alone all those years in my illness and without a diagnosis, and even after my diagnosis. And I think it's an important thing for us to talk about, important for us to magnify these stories, to add legitimacy to the fact that, you know, there is a challenge within this space with respect to psychosocial support and mental health needs. And it's incumbent upon us as a network to work together, to empower each other, to find opportunities, to get access to services and supports that we need. So really our goal, a major goal of Pillar 3 is going to be to improve mental health and quality of life supports, and to improve access to resources. And the final, our 4th goal, Canada will have a unified rare disease community that creates comprehensive care and support systems for rare disease patients and their families. This is big, broad and sweeping, but really what we want to say is there's a lot of you out there doing amazing work. And there's a lot of people who are coming into this space and just having to figure out how to become an advocate at the end of their day, off the side of their desk, because they have no other choice. And there's a huge community of successful groups who have created, you know, advocacy networks, have contributed to policy, and are willing to share. I've entered into so many spaces where I say, listen, we've started a not-for-profit, I have questions, and the community just rallies around. People come around and say, let me tell you what we've done. Let me show you how we did it. Let me tell you what the roadblocks were. And so we need to create an opportunity for us to connect more regularly. For those of us who are coming into this space or who have questions, to be able to reach out to all of those who are here to support. So a major goal of our pillar will be, again, to strengthen the collaboration and the opportunity for collective action, to kind of enhance the sense of the spirit of our community, and to just continue to amplify those who are doing good work so that we can improve care and support across the board. And that's it for our 4 major goals.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the speakers for giving us an overview of our strategic plan, our goals. I already saw in the chat that, you know, like, yes, it is an ambitious goal, but I think we have the right people on board, and, you know, it'll be a step-by-step process, and we certainly don't want to go it alone. As we said, partnership and collaboration will be key. And I also want to give a big thank you to the individuals that dedicated their time already and contributed to the co-development of our strategic plan. You've seen their faces, and, you know, we are so grateful for your insights. So, you know, you've attended today, and we have all the documents live, and it's been in the chat as well. and you can find on our website. And I really do encourage you to fill in our feedback form and, let us know what you think. And again, it's an opportunity as well for us to see, where do you see priorities amongst our goals, and kind of it will allow us to identify some of the more immediate action items and map out a more dedicated plan as well. We encourage you to sign up to our newsletter and follow us on our social media to stay in touch. And we do hope to have more of these virtual sessions and touching base with the community as we develop the network and evolve. And to give your thoughts and reflections on the CRDN, we would much appreciate it.
Well, hello, and thank you very much. I just want to say that I can't be happier that this network is live now, has been born. There were attempts before, and lack of funding, it didn't happen, but now it's reality. And I thank Francois and Kim and others for always inviting the umbrella patient organizations in these discussions. And particularly, we're involved in Pillar 3, care, support, and empowerment. And we hope to get involvement of many patients and patient organizations. And I just want to say that I'm also happy that you welcomed also our initiatives, first with the RQMO, the Eye Rare Center that we established years ago and helped many patients in Quebec. And now that we're extended it to the rest of Canada. And I think it'll fill a gap to be able to answer questions from patients, parents, caregivers, and I hope it can be an integral part of this network in Canada in the future. And so I just want to say, and I want to shout out to all the specific rare disease patient organizations. Today we launched our Canadian Eye Rare Centers website. It's eyerarecenters.org. And you'll see that we worked in making up a directory of all the rare disease specific organizations in Canada. We have about 200. I really hope we got everybody. If we don't, please contact us. And what's important about that is that we want to inform you of the activities of this network and other great activities across Canada. So thank you very much for this initiative.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gail. And I know that we have Dehane on the line as well, and we have a few more minutes. So Dehane, any last thoughts on the Canadian Rare Disease Network?
No, so very much echo, I think, what Gail just said as well. This has been a long time coming. For those of you who know, we've been advocating for this since 2006. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of when we actually put out from CORD the Rare Disease National Strategy based on really the national plan that the UK had. So I just want to also acknowledge the importance of our international partners and international, I know many of us are connected internationally. In fact, I'm sitting here in Dublin right now, having just finished a 2-day chairing of a meeting between the China Rare Disease Network and the UN Reference Network. So looking at how to collaborate and work more closely across borders. And I think just last week as well, we were in Barcelona, where Catalonia, since you're going to do a Rare Disease Network, we had a chance to work with them and talk about how we can collaborate more. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity where the Canadian Rare Disease Network will also become a major international partner. And certainly, I think all the things that are laid out here are going to help us become truly, I think, as we said, the vision of Canada being an absolute leader. It has been a long time coming. Just to do two quick things. One is, of course, we're still pushing on this $1.5 billion rare disease drug strategy and trying to still advocate much for the expansion of it beyond just funding drugs, but to support the infrastructure, which we think is essential. The second thing is to say that we're very excited that CORD and RKMO is hosting a joint conference at the end of November, November 26 and 27 in Montreal, where we'll be also featuring the Canadian Rare Disease Network, Research Network. We're also going to get some updates, we hope, on what's happening with Health Canada, with the rare disease drug strategy, and also have an opportunity to look at specifically what's going on with the Quebec Rare Disease National Plan. We're just delighted that they're going to be there to present, and the Research Network from Quebec will present it, as well as some of the care centers. So truly looking for an integration across the country in terms of initiatives, strategies that are in place. And I think really very much appreciate, I think, the tremendous amount of support and work that One Child, Every Child has put into this, and really seeing us as an opportunity. So yeah, for me, it's an opportunity for us to now have our international status as a rare disease network.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Duhane. And I know we are on time. Francois, any last words as the chair of the Canadian Rare Disease Network?
Yeah, just kudos and thanks. I've been in this field a very, very long time. Well, a few years, okay. But I don't think I've ever seen so much opportunity and momentum. So I think it's up to us together collectively to seize the moment. Work your contacts, engage, find out how you can contribute, but more importantly, how do we coordinate our efforts both in the local, national, and international scene? We are going to make a difference. So thanks, everyone. Really incredible work.